Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Tonight's guest is somebody that works at MESN Radio and hosts his own podcast, The Doug Siravo Show, to talk Stanley Cup Final, NBA Finals, and more. Doug Siravo, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
Alrighty. Stanley Cup Final. There were 4 games that happened. It's a 2-2 series now. What are your thoughts on this matchup so far?
I think it's an even Stanley Cup Final, and I truly believe that whoever wins Game 5 will win the Stanley Cup.
I believe you are right as well. Although any of the 4 possible series outcomes won't surprise me. Bruins in 6, Bruins in 7, Blues in 6, Blues in 7. It won't surprise me, though. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think this is a final where there's not that really top dog, where it would be, how do you say it, a guaranteed win, where you could look at Pittsburgh and San Jose. None of us really thought what San Jose had. Same thing with Nashville, and ultimately Pittsburgh came out on top, winning 2 in a row. And I think the same thing with Washington and Vegas. I think everyone knew that Washington was the favorite team to win. But for this series, I think it's anybody's cup right now.
I agree with you there. Who do you think has been the best player in the series so far?
For me, it has to be Tuukka Rask. He's been playing lights out this whole postseason. He's keeping Boston in the series, and you've seen in a few games that St. Louis could have ran away with it. It could be 3-1 St. Louis, but Tuukka stood on his head and has the series at 2-2, going back to Boston.
Yeah, Tuukka's been phenomenal. He has to be the favorite for the Conn Smythe, assuming that Boston wins. Let's say if the Blues win the Cup, who do you think would win the site or the Conn Smythe if the Blues win the Cup?
I mean, you can make a case for Binnington, but he's been a little iffy in recent. You could make a case for O'Reilly. But for me, I think it's Schwartz. He has, I think these are his postseason stats. 11 goals, 25. These could be his regular season. Hold on.
He's in the double digits for goals in the postseason.
Yeah, he's in double digits for the goals.
For the postseason, he's in double digits. I think he should be the Conn Smythe winner if the Blues were to win. Although Tarasenko would not surprise me. He's the best player on that team. He's had a good final. He's had a great postseason, and he's been scoring big goals for the Blues as well. What was your original pick for this series?
I think I know in my bracket that I did San Jose and Boston with San Jose winning. And then when it became Boston and St. Louis, I picked Blues in 7. But I also had a feeling that Boston could be the team that comes out on top. But for me, I always wanted to see St. Louis win the Stanley Cup.
Me too. I took the Blues in 6, but I really don't know what's going to happen these next two or 3 games, depending on how this goes. But I would like to see the Blues win too. It'd be a great story. It'd be their first cup in franchise history, and it's just something that city deserves. Boston's won the last couple championships, so it's okay if they don't win this one.
Yeah, that would be 3 for the city of Boston this year.
Yeah, that would just be awesome because St. Louis loses the Rams, and then the Blues were a contender for a couple years, and then finally they break through and make the final with this core of like Schwartz and Tarasenko and Pietrangelo and Steen and all these guys. And it would just be awesome to see that group win a cup. So I'm pulling for the Blues.
Yeah, they had their first run in 2011-12 where they ultimately fell to the Stanley Cup champions, and I hate to say it, the Los Angeles Kings.
Yeah, it was the 11-12 run. It was 2012 when the Kings won that first cup in that run with King and Quick and Kopitar and Doughty, that core. Yeah, the Blues did fall short to the Kings, and I believe that was in the second round. And then they were in the conference finals a few years ago against San Jose, and then San Jose ultimately beat them. And then they missed the playoffs last year, don't forget that. And then here they are now in the Stanley Cup Final, 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup. So that would just be awesome. And meanwhile, if Boston...
On January 3rd, they were the worst team in the league.
That's right, worst team in the league in January, mid-January, and then they turned it around. And on the flip side, if the Bruins were to win, it would be the second cup, obviously, for Tuukka Rask. And meanwhile, Tim Thomas was actually their goalie. I believe Rask was their backup back then. And then, obviously, Bergeron.
Against Vancouver.
Yeah, against Vancouver. Bergeron and Marchand and, obviously, Zdeno Chara, who broke his jaw. Do you believe we'll see him in the series? I believe we will. That guy's a warrior.
Yeah, especially if this could be his last season. I think he'll do everything he can to win another Stanley Cup and go out on top.
Yeah, and the Bruins with this core over the last few years, I remember Claude Julien gets fired, and then Bruce Cassidy comes in and has been phenomenal in Boston. Made the playoffs every year under him, and now 2 wins away from a cup. So, interesting storylines for tomorrow night and for the rest of the series. Let's switch over to the NBA Finals now, which tonight is Game 3. Kevin Durant doesn't play tonight. Klay Thompson's status is up in the air. He's questionable. Then Woj reported just a couple hours ago that the Warriors want Klay Thompson to sit, but apparently I think Klay Thompson wants to play. Do you think Klay plays tonight?
I wouldn't be surprised. When it's this time of year, everybody's hurt. And if you want to win a championship, you'll play through whatever injury you have, unless it's severe.
Yeah, we'll find out tonight whether it's very severe or not. DeMarcus Cousins obviously is back for the series. He had an impact in Game 2. I think he'll have some moments tonight in the game, and it's a 1-1 series right now. How do you think this plays out?
Personally, I want the Toronto Raptors to win this series. But whoever wins this game, I think, wins the series. Because in the NBA, I think it's like 1 in 30-something of teams coming back from a 2-1, 3-1 deficit.
Yeah, it's happened a few times.
Whoever wins this wins the series.
It has happened a few times. The Cavaliers a few years ago were down 3-1 and came back and won the 2016 finals. And then the Warriors were down 2-1 to Cleveland in 15. Like, there's been a couple instances. San Antonio was up 2-1 on Miami in 13. Miami came back and won. So I remember in the last few years, there were a couple times the team that won the championship trailed in the series. So I don't necessarily agree with you about that, but if Golden State goes up 2-1, I think they have a better chance of holding on to winning the series rather than if Toronto goes up 2-1, because the return of Kevin Durant is looming, and I think there's a chance we see him in Game 5, and that's what the Warriors are targeting. Do you believe he'll be back for Game 5?
That's pretty good for Kevin Durant to get a few games in before his big free agency.
Yeah, that's very true. It's kind of risky if he does play, because if he gets hurt again, then that is such, very damaging and could cost him money, potentially. But I don't know if it would cost him money if he got hurt again, because he's Kevin Durant. But I remember when Boogie Cousins tore his ACL or the Achilles a few years ago, that cost him some money in free agency, which led him to sign that discount with the Warriors. But this is Kevin Durant, not DeMarcus Cousins, so should be very, very interesting. And I do think we'll see Kevin Durant, because I think he wants to play, I think he wants to win, and I think he wants to prove everybody that he wasn't a passenger that hopped on the Warriors. He wants to be the best player and lead them to a championship. Or I should say third championship, because don't forget he was the Finals MVP the last 2 seasons against the Cavaliers. So there's that as well. So, a couple quick hits for you. Let's go to baseball really quick. Dallas Keuchel and Craig Kimbrel are still free agents. No more draft pick compensation to them. Who do you think the best fit for Keuchel is?
The best fit for Keuchel? I would say, if anything, the Houston Astros just because they know him. He knows the city. He knows how to perform in Houston, especially when there's no spring training, jumping into a new clubhouse. It's going to be tough. So I would say if he wants to find somewhere where he could be comfortable pitching in, it would have to be to go back to the Houston Astros if they want to bring him back.
Yeah, the Astros bringing him back would certainly not be that big of a shock to me, even though I thought there was a chance he'd end up back there in free agency. But to me, I think the better fit for Dallas Keuchel's in the National League, because I just think that with no spring training, I feel like with his abilities and whatnot, I just think he's a better fit in the National League than in the American League. I feel like if he went to an AL East team, then he'd get beat up by the opponents or whomever. And then the Astros know him, and that's the other crazy thing, and that's kind of why I'm against the Yankees signing him, because say if they were to face the Astros in a playoff series, the Astros know Keuchel, and those hitters would know, like, his pitches and stuff. That's my big fear if the Yanks were to sign Keuchel. But I think the best fit for him would personally be Atlanta, because they have the need. They have a young staff, and he would fit perfectly with them in a big ballpark in Atlanta. And with that young staff, he would slide right into the middle of that rotation. What do you make of the fit on Atlanta?
I think that could help them in the NL East race, have another arm. Because if you look at it, they have Ultramevich, they have Tehran, I think they have Soroka at 3. So I think another proven pitcher can help them repeat as division champions.
I agree.
Try and make a push into the postseason.
Yes, that would be like another great fit. And another team I thought about for Keuchel, and I think it would be nice, would be the San Diego Padres, who have Chris Paddock, who struggled his last 2 starts, but has really shown that he could be a good pitcher in this league. And they have some other young, good arms, too, up in the farm system and on their roster as well. So I think he would fit lovely in San Diego and that big ballpark, too. What do you make of him on the Padres?
I think he would be a good fit for them. This is a team that brought in Manny Machado, Eric Hosmer in 2017. So this is a team that has money if they want to give him that contract that he's looking for, but I don't think any team wants to do that now, especially since it's June. So I could see the Padres being in play, especially if they want to try and make a run for the wild card spot, having an experienced pitcher along with their young guy, Paddock.
Yes, I like that San Diego fit for him as well. What about Craig Kimbrel? Do you see a team in the National League East in play, like the Nationals or the Phillies or the Braves or any other random team?
If there's a team that needs to go after a bullpen pitcher, whether they have him as a closer or even as a 8th inning guy, if he's down for that, that's the New York Mets. I was at the game last night, and Mickey Callaway took out Noah Syndergaard with 2 outs. Evan Longoria was about to bat, and Longoria hits a double, ties up the game at 3, and I think it was the top of the 10th inning, he brings in Gazelman, and that was a 6-run inning for the San Francisco Giants to win a game 9-3 that the Mets should have won. So if there's a team that really needs bullpen help, it's the New York Mets. I could see the Braves being in place since they know Kimbrel and they brought him up through their system. So I think it's between the Braves and the Mets who really need the bullpen help.
I agree with the Mets, but I don't know if they want to spend the money. Although, like you said, they could use him a lot, especially if they want to get back into that division race a little bit. But to me, the team that I think could use him the most is Philadelphia, especially if they want to win that division. Their bullpen's been up and down this year, and they really don't have a proven closer. David Robertson's on the disabled list, so I just think Philly would be a nice fit for Kimbrel. Although Atlanta would be a great fit. Washington can use him too. Don't forget about the Nationals. They are quietly sort of playing better again, So maybe they'll play themselves back into this, and maybe they will open up their resources and sign Craig Kimbrel. What do you make of a fit in Washington?
I mean, they're not having a bad season if you look at it, especially the division they're in. They're still in, I think, maybe 4 games out of that bad division. So if they get their team together and start going on a run where they're in the division or in the wild card race and they need a guy that can save some games, I could see the Nationals being a fit.
I agree with you there. Let's switch over to some hockey rumors real quick. Bob McKenzie reported the other day that Pittsburgh and Minnesota are exploring a deal involving Jason Zucker and Phil Kessel straight up. I do not love that deal from Minnesota's side at all. Jason Zucker's a fine player, although Phil Kessel is too, but Kessel's a little bit older. What do you make of that possible deal?
I think it's just Pittsburgh looking to dump some salary. So if I'm Minnesota, I would stay away from Phil Kessel because I just wouldn't want to bring in a guy that's getting up in his early to late 30s with the type of contract he has.
I agree with you. And if Minnesota and Pittsburgh were to do this deal, I think Minnesota should be getting more than just Phil Kessel for Jason Zucker. Like I said, Jason Zucker's a fine player. How do you think Jason Zucker would fit in Pittsburgh? I think he'd be a great fit there.
I think he would, especially when you have Crosby at 1, Malkin at 2, and if you want to put Zucker at 3 and Rust at 4, that would be a good 4 centers.
That would be a great 4 center if they were to pull that off. Who do you think will be the biggest name traded this summer in the NHL? I had somebody on the podcast yesterday, and he thinks it's going to be PK Subban. Do you agree with him, or do you think there will be a bigger name traded?
I don't know. I think PK would stay in Nashville, but they haven't really been consistent since that Cup run. They won the President's Trophy, and then they lost to Winnipeg, and then they lost in the first round this year, I believe. So if they want to make some changes and solve whatever problems going on, I could see PK Subban being traded, but I think the big piece that may be traded could be Henrik Lundqvist. You look at teams, there's a few teams that could use a starting goaltender. You could look at Minnesota could be one. Calgary could be one. I always believe with Riddick and Smith, it was a little inconsistent for them to make a deep run, and we saw that in the first round of the playoffs. But for me, it just all depends on what the status is. The status is with Gieviev and Igor, however you say his last name.
Oh, Igor. I just call him Igor.
Yeah, Igor.
But that's an interesting one. I think the Rangers wanted to trade him, but Henrik Lundqvist has a no-trade clause, and he said he didn't want to be traded. So that's interesting. If he changes his mind, then I think the Rangers would be open to the idea. I think I'd be shocked if they moved him, but I wouldn't be dumbfounded. I'll put it that way. But yesterday, when I had my guest on, I told him I think it would be Cam Atkinson of Columbus because I don't see them bringing back Artemi Panarin. They lost John Davidson to the Rangers as their president of hockey ops. And do they bring back Mac Duchene? I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. So I can see them trading a piece like Cam Atkinson to get some draft picks in there and try to get younger and build around Seth Jones and Pierre-Luc Dubois. What do you make of that?
That is actually very interesting, especially if they don't bring back Bobrovsky, Panarin, and Duchesne. And you have Ryan Dzingel out there, too, that are free agents.
Yes. Forgot about Ryan Dzingel. And another name I thought about, and I should have mentioned this to my guest yesterday, Jacob Trouba of the Winnipeg Jets. I feel like that's a name that we're going to be hearing a lot of, but I don't know if they'll actually trade him. What do you make of Jacob Trouba?
if there's a team that could use Jacob Truber, that's the New Jersey Devils.
Not a bad fit. They could use a top D-man to go with Sammy Vatanen.
And knowing Ray, he's not going to use all these second-round draft picks that he acquired for Marcus Johansson, Brian Boyle. So look out for the Devils to try and bring in a guy like Truber.
That would be a great fit in New Jersey. That's a good call. And then another name, I don't think Winnipeg would do this. I think it's more likely they do Trouba. But what about Patrick Laine? He had a disappointing year this past year, and I don't know if Winnipeg wants to pay him or what. What do you make of Patrick Laine?
I think he is going to stay put unless it's a situation where he's in the last year of his contract and he's requesting a boatload of money. They may look to move him to get some picks just in case he decides to walk away from the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, that should be interesting. And speaking of guys that will probably be on the move, two guys that are playing in the NBA Finals and the best players on their respective teams, Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard. Do you think either of these guys stay with their respective teams or have a chance to stay with their respective teams, or do you think they move on?
I mean, you could give a case for both of them to stay. If you think of, if you're Kevin Durant, you could look at, do I have a guaranteed trip to the NBA Finals every year? Yes, I do. So do I stay with Golden State, or do I go to a team like the New York Knicks, who haven't won a title in over 40 years, and be their guy that brings back their first championship? If you look at Mark Messier, he's a guy that has won over 5 Stanley Cups, but no one talks about his Oilers Cups. They all talk about his New York Ranger first cup after 54 years. So knowing Kevin Durant and the personality he has, I could see him wanting to go to a team like the Knicks where he could bring back a championship and be glorified and have him be the talk of the best player in the NBA, and maybe even, I don't think he is, but even the greatest of all time, knowing how his ego is. But with the Knicks and their ownership, who knows if they would actually spend that money.
Yeah, I know Dolan likes to spend, but Dolan's just not a very good at managing the team per se. He's not a good owner-manager, although you got to give him credit with the Rangers, though. The Rangers have been successful under him. They've made some runs, and that's a great comparison you made to Messier. If the Knicks are to have a meeting with Durant, I really hope Dolan brings in Mark Messier, because that would just be pretty cool, because, like you said, that would be similar to Messier leading the Rangers to that championship that broke their drought. And I wouldn't rule out the Clippers for Kevin Durant, especially if Kawhi Leonard stays with the Raptors, if the Raptors win the championship. What if Kawhi just wants to stay there and Kevin Durant says, hey, let me go to the Clippers and try to rival LeBron in LA, but some people have said that he doesn't want to share the spotlight with LeBron, and that's a case for him to go to the Knicks. What do you make about that?
I can understand that point, but I could also think of a point like this, where the Warriors, from Kevin Durant's standpoint, is, I'm the reason why you guys won back-to-back championships. I want to show you that I could win without Steph Curry. I want to show you I could win without Clay and Dre. So you know what? I'll go to a team in the West and take you guys out. And there goes your run of 5 straight conference championships. And for Kawhi, I could see him staying in Toronto. That's the best road to the NBA Finals, because if you go to the West, there's a 99% chance of you not getting past Golden State.
Yeah, exactly. The East is more wide open than the West, but that's right now. After the summer, who the heck knows? And last thing before we go, somebody we know was drafted by your favorite team, the Tampa Bay Rays. What do you make of that? Our friend Robbie Pito, Monroe Township's own.
I think that's great for him to get drafted and recognized again, especially 3 years ago. So hopefully this could be another step to the big leagues. And the Rays are known for building great players. Unfortunately, if it wasn't for the cap situation, maybe they would have 2 or 3 World Series championships. Because if you look at it, they had Ben Zobrist, he won 2 World Series, one with the Royals, one with the Cubs. David Price, Longoria's been a good bat. He's out of his prime now, though. So the Rays produced a lot of good young players that, if it wasn't for the cap, maybe they would stay and been able to win a World Series or 2.
Yeah, they've drafted well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, but who knows? He might go back to college and try to improve his value even more. And then a lot of these guys have done that get drafted when they're young. And then they get drafted higher when they're juniors and seniors, as we saw in the draft this year. A lot of guys that were drafted that were college players that were drafted early were juniors and seniors. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I just think it's funny that your favorite baseball team drafted somebody that we know, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he's entering his senior year next year.
I think I read he had 2 years left of college ability left.
It might because of how he transferred.
I think that's what it was, because of his transfer. I think it was because of his transfer. He has 2 years left. So I hope you have a great night, and we'll have you on maybe in July to talk about all these free agent moves and trades in both the NBA and in the NHL, and maybe a little bit of baseball as the trade deadline approaches. I hope you have a good night.
Thank you, you too. And I'm looking forward to hear what Smart Jeff has to say about the Belmont Stakes.
Oh, that's going to be fun. Smart Jeff's a good guest, and we'll have him on Friday to talk about the Belmont and the Stanley Cup and the NBA as well. Hope you have a good day.
You too, man.